What is up, ladies and gentlemen, YouTube? Today, I am going to be reviewing Luther, episode 2 of the season 4. Now, this could most likely be the season or series finale, depending on where they actually take this thing. But let's start reviewing it right here, right now. This is a little bit late, but I actually wanted to get this done. Now, this pretty much kicks off exactly where we left off in the previous episode, where Luther is getting this message from this woman that apparently has known Alice, or did not know Alice, but is telling Luther that Alice has sent him a message. Luther obviously doesn't believe him because Luther doesn't believe anything until he has the facts. But then he realizes that this woman is not necessarily who she says he is. Now, who she says she is. Now, one of the things I did not particularly like in this episode was that I feel as if, even though this is supposed to be, kind of like the end of Luther, from what we know, I feel like every second counted, every minute counted, to the point where we almost should not have saw what happened, the last 3 or 4 minutes from the previous episode. I feel like we really didn't need to have that in this episode. Like, if you saw a previous episode, good. That's great. But we didn't need to, put it in here, in my opinion. Or if you did, then add extra 4 minutes to the hour and then consider it done. Now, to me, personally, I always was like, why put these 2 episodes, just put 2 episodes to kind of wrap everything up. But, whatever, I guess that's how BBC wanted it, I guess, and sadly that kind of affected this episode. But let's talk about it right here. As I said, it picks up exactly where I left off. Luther eventually is interrogating this woman, who proclaims to be a psychic. Obviously, he's calling bullshit. And then it turns out that this woman is actually linked to the case with the cannibal. Or, actually not the cannibal, but she's linked to a case. So while this is going on, Luther is obviously trying to solve this thing, and he's trying to figure out this Alice thing, but then he still has the cannibal on the loose. And, his partner, Emma, she's a little bit stricken for revenge, and she's saying she want to eat his heart, the cannibal's heart out. So I was just like, okay, she's trying to go down that deep, dark alley path, And they try and build up some character to her, and they do a pretty solid job at doing it, but for the most part, having 2 episodes to build up somebody's character is not necessarily the easiest thing to do. Unfortunately for this episode, what really suffered was that I felt like they had good character development and they had a nice, good pacing, but unfortunately they tried to go slow and a bit fast at the same time to kind of cramp everything in, and unfortunately everything kind of felt a little bit off. Like I already said it before, if the whole Alice thing was kind of done, then why would you kind of kill her off, on the sidelines during when the show isn't airing? To me, it doesn't really make any sense, but for this episode, as I said, they're chasing down this cannibal, and the cannibal stuff, it was slightly interesting in the first episode of this, but in this one, I felt like it wasn't. It was like the least interesting thing. The guy's name is Steven, and eventually they kind of track this guy down, and they put his name out there, and they find out that this guy's been watching most of London, over 200 people, and they're trying to warn most of the people that he's been watching. Now, one of the negatives that I saw in this thing was there's a family that is watching on the TV. And then she realizes the guy, and then the family's not going up to the door, but the husband goes to the door, and the wife is watching the TV, but for some reason she doesn't tell her husband, don't go to the door. They may be a man that's been watching us, trying to kill us. And then he kills them, and then it's just like, well, that was kind of a dumb thing, lady. You should have really have said something. Your kids should have listened. Quite frankly, not that I say they deserved it, but they kind of brought it on themselves for feeling that stupid. Also, George, which was the billionaire that Luther handcuffed in the first episode of the season, when he's trying to get answers as to who killed Alice, he did that. And once George escaped, he called Luther and said, you've been greenlit. I put a price on your head. Luther just says how much, like it's just a casual day in the life of John Luther. And that's kind of what I liked in a way, because even though Luther just people trying to kill me, that's just an average, ordinary day, for me, that type of shit happens all the time. Nothing new. He just said how much, and he just went on with his day. Now, that was an interesting thing to see, because he's trying to, catch this cannibal on the loose, and then he's trying to find Alice's killer, and then at the exact same time, he's trying to dodge hitmen, so it was just kind of like one big giant thing that Luther has to deal with, but then Luther likes, kind of obstacles, I guess, in some way. But eventually the hitmen are coming, and that's kind of an interesting thing, but they kind of just leave it in one scene. He gets a bit paranoid and a couple other things, but they only send one group, and the one group that comes on a motorcycle and tries to attack him, he's blocking them by, a couple of trash cans, right? And they're shooting at the trash cans. But for some reason, you would think, because he's blocking his face with the trash cans, that they would maybe aim for his legs. to take him down. You know, he said it was rubbish. You know, that's a British word, but he said it was rubbish, their attacks, and it kind of was. You know, for the most part, it was a very shitty attack. And then after that, they really didn't do much with the Hitman angle, but whatever. Eventually, you know, they track this killer down, and they find his base and whatnot, and he took the wife from that family that I was talking about hostage for some reason. You know, he's linked to this case. The woman that was the messenger, apparently she was blackmailing Luther. She's the one that was in Luther's house. She took the phone. She's listening to him, Luther and Alice's conversations, because Luther owed her a promise of something, so he had to get that done, and then add that to the 3 things he's trying to get done. You know, this was a pretty hefty episode, and that's kind of one of the problems of this episode, was that they tried to put too many things in one episode. They tried to, like, add in shit that really didn't need to be added, but then they also tried to resolve things that needed to be resolved. You know, now, for the most part, when they track this guy down and, you know, he's about to kill Luther, I was just like, oh, great, he's about to kill him or do whatever. The thing is, the cannibal stuff isn't that interesting. It was kind of the weakest part of this episode. And, you know, when Emma is, like, with Luther, she takes Luther's gun, his unauthorized private gun, and then she shoots Stephen, the cannibal, because she says she wanted revenge, and she got her revenge. Now, Luther kind of plays off, said, all right, we don't mention it. You know, he was going for a gun, that was Stephen's gun, nothing to it. Let's just walk on. And then when that's all said and done, you know, it kind of ends with Luther going back to the woman that was, you know, blackmailing him and whatnot of sorts. You know, he relives his promise. He got that done, and then she realizes that, you know, she didn't kill Alice, but Alice may or may not be dead, and she was telling him that, you know, you both were bad for each other. You would have killed her, she would have killed you, and then it kind of, you know, he says, you should be afraid of me, and then it kind of walks off and is like, hey, this is kind of a happy ending, huh? Not really. To me, like I said, it was nice, and I feel like it was an open ending to the point where if this was the end, then it could still be a chance of there more Luther. But for the most part, I feel like it just ended, and then I was just like, as an episode or as a season finale, right? This is a good 2 episodes. As a series finale, as in the show is finally done, this is not really that good of an episode. Now, like I said, it was a great episode, and Idris Elba was badass and still great in the role, and he's great to watch. But unfortunately, nobody else is really that interesting. I like Benny, you know, I kind of like his boss, but for the most part, nobody's that interesting. You know, everybody's kind of gone, and Alice is actually dead. We don't get any, you know, resolution to it. It just kind of was like, what was the deal with all of this? I feel like these 2 episodes really didn't do anything, to me at least. Like, it was good to watch and fun to have Luther back, but at the exact same time, it didn't really do anything to advance. I felt like it still stayed there. Unfortunately, I feel like they almost could have just ended it. I feel like season 3, with Alice kind of coming with Luther, I feel like that should have just been in, and then you could just left it into interpretation from there. But unfortunately, this episode was a good episode for an episode, but not as a series, potentially, conclusion. But that is my review on Luther Season 4 now, apparently. But yes, comment, subscribe, like. I'm Chris Smith. Happy holidays after Christmas. Signing out.